Christophe was mentioning, and all the other, everybody has been mentioning, in order for the European car industry to be competitive, we need first competitive energy in Europe. Before we talk about the electrification of the car industry, maybe one question on that, on the competitiveness of energy in Europe. Do you think that we have, there are some solutions that can maybe help our industries to be competitive because they find cheap energy?
To find cheap energy in Europe is not easy because we import our energy. In fact, we should understand that in the last 10 years, we had a completely modified landscape. The North Sea, which was producing oil and gas, has a declining production. That's a fact. We lost the Russian gas, which was a very cheap source of gas. We were paying the Russian gas more or less at $20 per barrel equivalent, which is the price of the gas in the US today. And also, by the way, we have engaged, and it's important into the transition on an accelerated way, not only in the automotive industry, but in the energy industry as well, by putting a price on the carbon. We took a strong decision in Europe. Today, the price of the carbon is 60 euro per ton. It was 100 euro per ton a few years ago. And we are the only continent, the only economic area with a real price of carbon. All the economists will tell you that if we want to make the transition, we need to have a carbon price. But unfortunately, at this stage, we have not convinced our main partner, either in the US or in China. And people have to understand when it's price, today we speak about the price of electricity around 60 euro per megawatt hour, where the industry would like 40. In this 60, yes, the gas price is higher than before. It represents 30. But the other part of the 30 is the CO2 price. So I think we engage into that Green Deal with a lot of enthusiasm, trying to create some competitive advantage at a time where our energy landscape was not the same than today. We had the benefits of the cheap Russian gas. And so there is a question mark for us. At which pace do we continue to move into the transition, including with the carbon pricing? If we are alone, and if we want to, honestly, this is the only way to have an impact, in fact, on the energy price in Europe. Electricity in Europe, fundamentally, the cost is gas plus CO2. The CO2 is in the hand of the government. The number of quota, CO2 quota, is decided by the European Commission, the European Parliament. There is a market which, again, is just adapting. The more you have quotas, the lower the prices. It's quite simple, but it's completely administrated. And why today is it at 60 and not at 100? It's just because in the meantime, not only we have a high energy price, we have a lower industry demand. Because the reality is that because of the higher energy price, the industry is declining in Europe. The energy demand for industry has diminished by more than 10%. Why? The CO2 is declining. So that's the only way, in fact, because we will import energy. We will import gas. We will import energy. So I think it's the question for us is at which pace do we continue to desynchronize compared to the rest of the world? Do we manage to convince the rest of the world to adapt a significant carbon price or not? If we don't do it, there is only one way for our industry to be competitive, is to close the borders.
Or delocalize.
Which, fundamentally, I'm not in favor, because I think that's not a good answer, even if this is what I observe in many countries around the world. We see some fracturation. Even the US have taken some strong, I would say, anti-free trade decisions. But it's not good because it's not good for the consumer at the end. And this green transition, where we have to introduce a lot of technologies, if we really want to have consumers adopting this technology, we need to drive the costs down, and we drive the costs down by competition and innovation. I completely share the views of the CEOs, which just make some speech behind me.
Let's move on to the car industry. As in the energy world today, the key word is electrification. But when you look at the electrification of the car industry, what is your view? Do you think The timing is good, the approach is good. How do you perceive this transition in the car industry?
My predecessors know very much better than me the car industry. I would say for us, by the way, we have the same topic. It became TotalEnergies because we are moving from oil and gas to electricity. So I'm exactly in the same transition with our company, my company. But I would say, my view, I share the view. I don't understand why regulators want to select technologies instead of setting some targets. The targets could have been minus 50% of CO2 per kilometer, minus 60, minus 70, and get to minus 90%. At minus 20%, then it's a matter of competitions and innovation between technologies. We have decided to make a different choice because it's true that the EV electrification is the most efficient way to move for road transportation, there is no doubt. So I think it could have been the solution, but it would have come, I would say, from some different choices, different segments of customers. Having said that, it's there, 2035, there is a debate, 2035, 2040, it will be there. I don't want to contribute to the debate between car manufacturers. At the end, for us, what does it mean? It's quite a transition. That means that we have to, for example, all our service stations, we have to rethink the model. Because we know that the people who have this service station will be used only, I would say, 20-30% of the time, but most of the people will charge their cars either at home or at their office, in the streets. So it's completely, but we not go to retail stations. We go to retail stations from the freeways, expressways, for long distance. So of course, it's a big question mark for us. It's also a big investment because we have decided to engage really in it. Now we have 40% of the freeways in France. We own 40% of the concession. We have equipped them in the last 2 years. Have taken the decisions. Of course, they are not full, I would say. So we have made the investments with a payout which is above 10 years probably. I'm encouraging all the customers to come, by the way, because when you have and it's a difficult topic, let's be clear for us, very difficult topic, because when you equip, first the customers, they want high charging power point, charge, quick, fast, 15 minutes, maximum 30 minutes. And then you have an issue, which is when you go to a charging point, you occupy some space, a parking lot, in fact. And the people, when you are at a gasoline station, you come 5 minutes and you exit. You don't want to stay. It's not very convenient, and so you exit. There they stay with their car, they park a lot, so they occupy the space, and the others are waiting behind it. So either you make a huge equipment of 30, 40 spaces, which obviously will be empty most of the time. We began by making 6 to 12, I think, per station on the motorways in France. But the profitability of that is quite low, in fact, to be clear. So that's a change. But it's also absolutely necessary because I think it's chicken and egg. Car, I will not say that in front of you, is a car is for me a symbol of freedom, You can move your car, and today when you go into a combustion car, you don't ask yourself, will I find gasoline? You know that you find gasoline somewhere. When you have, I have 2 electric cars myself, I know that I'm thinking to that, and so it's important to develop this quick equipment. I think we are making a lot of progress on it, but it's and so I'm encouraging now the car industry to develop its business with the customers, and we are there to welcome them and to I would say to benefit from this transition, knowing that TotalEnergies again we are integrated in the electricity value chain. We produce electricity and we go down to the EV charging point and through batteries as well.
Before we move on to the batteries, maybe a question on oil. For how many years would you think you will still be selling oils in your gas station in Europe? It's going to be for a long, long time?
In Europe, it will depend. If the calendar is respected, 2035, it will take 10, 15 years probably to have the car inventories to shift completely, because in 2035 it's until the flow, the new cars. So it could go until 2045, 2050, I imagine, for cars. For trucks, might be longer. The pace is not exactly the same. By the way, for TotalEnergies, we had the opportunity to In fact, in Europe today, my retail stations are concentrated in France. We divested because we had the opportunity to sell them at a good price. So rather than waiting the end of the life, we decided to move on. But we have also a lot of retail stations in other continents, in Africa, where I think the electrification will be longer than to come. In Europe, it's also a question mark for us. In fact, except Europe and China, of course, where we are developing some charging point networks in partnership with some large Chinese companies, it's quiet today around the planet. It's not going so quickly.
There's also something called Efuels. Is it something that has maybe for you some interest? Or
do you own a Ferrari or a Porsche?
I'm not going to say it a lot.
Honestly, the e-fuel is a type of... you know what is an e-fuel? Do you produce an e-fuel? Just to share with you, because it's a part of the gimmick today. An e-fuel is a combination. You take a molecule of CO2, but biogenic CO2, not anthropogenic. You need to find biogenic CO2, and then of hydrogen. Hydrogen, you don't find it in the nature, so you need to produce hydrogen. In the definition of the e-fuel in Europe, it's a green hydrogen. That means that you take some electrons. By the way, it's quite funny. You take some electrons, you electrolyze water, you produce hydrogen, you take a CO2, you make a combination of both, and then at the end, you obtain a synthetic fuel. So many steps. It's 10 times more expensive than gasoline. So in the debate about the energy transition, I can tell you, we speak about sustainability, of course, reliability, you want the energy permanently, but the affordability is just fundamental. So when you see what happened in France, when the gasoline price went from 1.5 euro per liter to 2 euro per liter, which was quite an increase, imagine it would have gone from 1.5 to 10. You want the revolution? So maybe Ferrari owner, car owner can afford it. I don't see much room for e-fuel. That's, I would say, for maybe 2050. It's a question of scale, of course, but it's a niche today. It's a super niche. And honestly, I will tell you, in terms of my allocation of capital, I prefer to develop the biofuel. Biofuel exists today. We can develop biofuels. You know, we can offer today E85 ethanol. You can find E85 ethanol. You can make HVO 100 for trucks. So there are options. And again, it's because something which strikes me in the European way we build the transition. We want the immediate perfect solution tomorrow, in 2030. Instead of thinking to that gradually. The biofuels are a way to make it gradually. Like that's the way where I'm frustrated about the car manufacturing industry. When I became CEO in 2014, at that time, the car manufacturers were explaining us that the combustion engine will go down from 6-7 liters per 100 kilometer to 2 liters per 100 kilometer. It was a super idea to diminish the emission, including with the diesel. Then you had the diesel scandal, etc. And we shifted completely out of these innovations, which would have been a gradual way to go to make it, really, pragmatically. In fact, because of this decision of EVs by 2035, all this innovation have been put aside, and we are waiting for 2035 with all the difficulties, the major disruption, which creates some difficulties. And at the end, why I insist on the gradual part is because of the consumer. We can bring the consumer step by step to accept, to move its way, its demand, and the affordability of the energy to make a car running, but not, I would say, in an
abrupt decision.
That does not work politically, socially. That's what I observe. And so, again, e-fuel, I don't know what is behind. Maybe some, again, car manufacturers on very high-end products would like to maintain a combustion engine. Yes, the emission will be ready, but we are not there to produce it in a large way. So I'm not sure. I don't think it's a solution.
And Oliver from BMW mentioned hydrogen. Is it for you? And he said the good thing with hydrogen is that you can still reuse the same gas station network. So for you, is there a market in hydrogen?
I don't. I mean, unfortunately, I think the hydrogen car is much less efficient than an EV car. 20% compared to 85% in terms of energy conversion. Europe has done a choice. The choice is EV. I am investing today in EV infrastructures. I don't see how we could think at the European level that we could invest in both infrastructure. And in fact, to be honest, I respect Oliver, but yes, a retail station is a space of land. But if I want to put some hydrogen station, I have to invest quite a lot of money, 3 million euros per station. I will not do that at the level of the continent. I think we need a standard. Either it's, for me, the standard is established. It will be EV. So again, maybe there is a niche somewhere for hydrogen cars, but I don't see hydrogen today really emerging because even, I always said hydrogen will emerge if we find a scalable market, a mass market. I was thinking a few years ago that it could be the trucks. But what we observe, even in the truck, with our truck manufacturers, is that as we invest a lot in batteries, etc., we make big progress on these batteries. And I think the trucks will be as well electric cars. And I don't see, I see a small niche for hydrogen. So if we don't have a mass market, I don't see how we could drive the cars down of producing hydrogen. So hydrogen today is a molecule which will help to decarbonize refineries, steel manufacturers, steel industry, and others. But today I don't see the mass market. And from this perspective, what will happen to the truck industry is very important. But again, my conviction, the more I'm looking to the progress, is that it will be electrified. And we begin within TotalEnergies to think, to equip. We have a European network for trucks from Poland to Portugal to equip it with very large, with 1 megawatt chargers in order to be able to accommodate these trucks along Europe.
Let's move on to the batteries business. You, as an investors in, you bought Saft, and then you had the joint venture with car manufacturers to invest heavily in the battery industry. How optimistic are you about this business today in Europe?
First, yes, we made a choice of Saft, acquiring Saft, which was the only European battery company with good technology. Because fundamentally for us, of energy storage, not for cars, to be clear, but for renewables. We cannot think about solar and wind, and we are building, investing $4 billion per year in solar and wind farms around the planet. If you don't put a battery, because at 12, the sun is shining for all the solar farms, so the price of electricity is negative, so you need to store it to deliver it when people are at home at the peak in the evening. But and Saft is more, I would say, a Saft specialized company. We agreed with, when Carlos Tavares came to me and asked me to create ACC, I had some hesitation, not because we have the technology, but because Saft is not a mass market company. We are more, I would say, small series, specialized batteries. We made that ACC, and our friends of Mercedes joined us, which is good. Knowing what would be a challenge, because a battery is first a chemical product, base chemistry. We have a lot of robots, and then it's a lot of energy. We spend a lot of energy in a battery plant in order to charge the batteries. And one of the issues we face, like other industries in Europe, today we face two issues. One, which is to train, to get our workforce at a level which will they make, because the chemistry part of the battery is complex. Honestly, it's like, I would say, in a bakery, you need to learn how to make the bread. You need to learn, it's more complex than making bread, to be honest. So you need to learn, so it takes years, and we knew that there was sort of learning curve. Sorry, it's a learning curve for workers, and that at the beginning, when you start a battery plant, you have 50% of wrong quality problems. Then you diminish 30, 20, but it takes time. By the way, that's why we were asking for subsidies to, I would say, fill this learning curve, eliminate the overrun costs that we will face because of the learning curve. So we are there.
I'm optimistic we should be able to progress, but it's a step-by-step approach. The second part is that, unfortunately, when we decided ACC, the price of electricity in Europe was not where it is today. And so we might suffer as well from this competitiveness, like other industries, of charging all our batteries. That's the two aspects. The third point is that, and that was it was a debate with my colleagues, my colleagues, shareholders of ACC, which, because of their own constraint of 2035, were willing to accelerate many plants in parallel. One in France, one in Germany, one in Italy, even we were discussing at the point in the US. And we were cautious on the TotalEnergies side because, let's make one running. When one will run, we can think to go to another one. And by the way, my view is that if you want to use this learning curve efficiently, it's better to add a second, to build the first plant rather than spreading the competency among many plants. So we are facing exactly that today. The debate is about at which pace can we really develop ACC. And that's, of course, for my colleagues, a real issue because they are not only shareholders but customers. And they have also to make their plans themselves to equip all these cars that the customers are willing by 2035. So for them, the question is not easy. ACC was, I think, a way for them to internalize the battery, which is quite a big part of the cost of the car. But they have also to find efficient batteries and cheap batteries. That's why they are also looking to other producers with a longer experience. So that's an adventure. We can participate to it. Again, we don't have the same strategic interest, to be clear. I'm not manufacturing cars. For me, it's one way to, at the end, a battery is a way to manage my electricity as an electricity producer. But we will continue, and we support, for sure, all the teams of ACC to do their best, and we are there.
Do you think that in terms of competitiveness, we will be able to compete on price and on technology with the Chinese batteries manufacturer? It's like the semiconductor industry. Once
By the way,
you're ready,
to be clear, you can visit ACC, all the robots are Chinese. Huh? Just to be sure, to be clear.
It's made in France.
China has, because the price of oil went to $100 by 2010, China, because the bill of oil for China, which is the largest importer of oil, and the reliance on the external world was a weakness for them, they have decided to embark into this transition for security of supply, for their own autonomy, 10 years in 2010. So they have 10 years in advance on everything, on the solar panels, where they dominate the world, on the wind turbines, on the batteries, on the cars. So they have an experience of all that. They have developed, and they made it at the difference of us, because, again, they wanted to be self-sufficient, not only for the customers as a transition, but also as an industry. So they have built this industry, and they benefit from a huge market, 1.5 billion Chinese. So the scale is there, the policy is there, and so they are in advance on all these matters. On batteries, also some Koreans are quite good, some Japanese. Asia was in advance for other reasons. So we are catching up on it, but there is a learning curve. And so if today the objective, and that's a debate, I think, for car manufacturers, do they use, I would say, these Chinese batteries, which are more cost efficient today, or do we continue the adventure on building European battery manufacturer? You've seen that Northvolt has some difficulties, and I think we will all face difficulties because, again, and what I'm afraid is that manufacturing in Europe with high cost of energy, higher salary costs, if we are an open market to the rest of the world, it's quite tough when you are CEO of this type of industries.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and see you at the next Mondial in a few years. Thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick. J'appelle maintenant Christelle Edman. Oh, merci, Patrick. Vous pouvez ressortir juste là. Christelle Edman, CEO of Orange. We said that the car is moving from, in terms of motorization, it's becoming an electrification of the car industry. But Christelle, you can join me on stage. smartphone in your hand and now in the pocket.